Hello, how are you today? First of all, thank you very much for taking the time and for reviewing this virtual class. On this virtual class, we're going to continue speaking about physical servers, virtual servers, and cloud computing. At the end, we're going to review a couple of examples for applications that we can have within the cloud. So let's start the class as usual with the quote of the day. The quote of the day, of course, is coming from Mr. Steve Jobs, and I will continue asking about this. Innovation distinguishes between a leader and a follower. And I'm pretty sure that all of you are leaders, and I'm absolutely convinced that all of you are going to continue innovating. So let's go with the topic of the day, physical servers. When we return some few years, I'm not speaking of 100 years, just some few years for physical servers, it was mandatory to have a big space with all the equipment, with everything to host those big servers. Of course, when we continue with the evolution of those physical servers, the companies like IBM, Dell, HP, and some others started to create something smaller. I remember back in some years and previous companies, they were having this type of server that it has the space for the floppy, also the space for the in that at that time it was the CD, not even a DVD, and also space to for reading the tapes for backup. In some special cases, the most advanced equipment had also the option for having this type of USB for installing some applications or operating systems. However, the size of this type of server, which was also known as the tower server, it was huge. So of course it was necessary to start creating something different. So in that moment is when they started creating what it is also considered as the rack servers, where I could have, of course, first of all, a smaller server, as second of all, a server with more capacity, more disk space, more memory, but most importantly, with smaller size. So in this case, this type of rack server, it was as big as 4 inches, and in some cases even less. This, of course, it was not enough for having this type of physical server. It was necessary to do it even smaller. So during the evolution is when some of the main server producers started to think in what they call the blade servers. The blade servers, at the naming first, it was a very thin server that it was without any case, without any type of connection for neither a DVD or a CD, absolutely nothing. Everything, all those servers were inserted within this blade chassis, or in this case, it says the PC blade carrier that was enabled to host, in this case, several servers. I have seen this type of equipment with not only 12 or 16, but sometimes hundreds of blade servers, even smaller. But the main problem here was same as those huge servers. It was necessary to have first a dedicated space. Second, it was necessary to have people who could give maintenance to that equipment. Three, of course, electricity, air conditioning, all the security to have this type of physical server. So of course they started to be smaller, from those big mainframes to the tower servers to the rack servers to the blade servers. but still physical servers. In that moment, they found that they were using one physical server for just one purpose. And what happened with that solution? What it happened is that for all the physical server, they were using just a portion of the capacity of the server. When I say a portion, I'm referring to a portion of the memory. I'm referring to a portion of the hard drives. I'm referring to the portion to the total capacity within the CPUs. And of course, the rest was absolutely idle. It was doing nothing. So in that moment, they identified that it was better to start looking for opportunities to have one operating system, two operating systems, three operating systems, or even more, as much as we could have capacity within that physical server. And having this in mind, they started, and this is what I'm representing here, is by using one physical server, I was able to have a database server, a web server, a security server, and perhaps something more and something more if I still have some capacity within the physical server. So server virtualization, just to return to my comments here, it is the technology that allows a physical server to have several operating systems instead of having one server with one and only one operating system. So let's say that, for example, let's imagine that this physical server, the first, the first, let me return and use my pen. Let's imagine that the first is using, for example, Microsoft Windows. So that was within this physical server. Then let's imagine that the second is using, for example, Linux. And let's imagine that the third one is using another type of operating system, for example, also Windows, but in a different version. We may have a Windows, let's say 2008, and also another version of Windows within the same physical box. In this case, of course, the utilization of the physical server, it will be even better, and that will give us just very high efficiency and only few space for that is not being used for anything else. So if we continue with this evolution, they found that having this type of virtualization, they were able not only to virtualize servers, but also they found the opportunity to start virtualizing PCs. In such case that um, it was not necessary. It was not necessary to have one computer assigned to one user. Instead, we could we could set up the configuration within one server. So imagine that, for example, the user A was able to arrive to the office and start using his configuration at the office. Then the same user, being at home, he was able to access the same configuration from home or from the airport or in another country or, for example, in a tablet. It was not necessary to bring a laptop. It was not necessary to carry on with either a computer or to have your information in your laptop and a backup at the office or having an external drive for installing either new applications or bringing information back and forth. By using a user and a valid password, automatically the user was able to log in any place at any time. Of course, the main problem here was that this server was still within the company. And I have reiterated still because of course, as I did mention a moment ago, it requires a data center, it requires electricity, it requires air conditioning, people, etc., etc. So they started gaining some mobility, they started gaining some uh, better configuration, but they still had the need to have everything connected to a data center within the company. Now, some of the brands that we have in the market, they have more. These are only some of them, but of course, they are leading some of the market for virtualization. So you will see VMware. I have personally worked a lot with VMware. Microsoft as well. They have the Hyper-V. They have the option for virtualization. Oracle. Citrix has a very nice technology called the VDI, which is the virtual desktop interface that works quite nice for having this type of different configurations, having the opportunity for the same user to be connected in different places, like having his computer everywhere. So the first assignment of the day is to go to within this video, and you will have it within your the presentation that I'm going to send in a moment by email. So check about this video. I think it's a very nice representation about virtualization, and hopefully you will enjoy it. For now, that is all for this chapter number 1. And after you watch this video, we see to each other in the chapter number 2. Thank you very much.